Thanks to the laboratory rats of Mickey, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, which were cut, poisoned, through, burned, we received a vaccine. My great gift to humanity. Hello, friends. Today I will tell you about the novelty of 2020, 50 years, called Mickey 17.
My name is Alex and welcome to my channel.
The young guy falls through the snowy in the cave and understands that he cannot get out. So here he will find the end. But then a flying machine hung over him, from which his friend Timo is selected, who is surprised that Mickey is still alive. It descends into the cave, but the ropes are enough only to the middle of the journey. And then Tim, taking Mickey's weapons, rises back, sympathizing with his friend. But in the end, nothing terrible happens because the Mickey will be printed again tomorrow. In parting, Tim asks the question for a long time, what is it to die? And asks to name the number of the current personality. Mickey, after a friend, reminds that he is the 17th and is preparing for death. Pretty soon, a huge mascara of an alien beast appears from the darkness, the mouth of which Mickey is about to end his existence. The action is transferred to the laboratory, where the guy's body is printed on a huge printer after his next death. Dr. Dorothy constantly updates his experiences and memories, and each time loads them into his brain. And this technology is so ahead of its time that its appearance caused a lot of controversy. Therefore, it was allowed to use only in space, where Mickey is located. It is sent to the most dangerous places. It is irradiated by the highest dose of radiation so that scientists can study all the symptoms and find treatment. And the main thing is to find out how much time he remains before his death. Mickey takes off his glove to show what is happening with his skin, and his hand breaks off and flies past the porthole of the spaceship, where everyone is busy with his own business and does not pay any attention to the death of the guy. It is printed once again, and Mickey immediately checks his hand, which turns out to be intact. But Dorothy immediately upset the guy, and this version of Mickey will live for only 10 minutes. However, he treats this calmly. Mickey could get rich in life insurance, but the trouble is that the consumables are not insured. They have no trade unions and pension benefits. They go there from despair, or ignorance. What was compatible in his case? The fact is that he and Tim decided to open a shop with pasta, for which they occupied a large amount of money from one, which is better not to occupy, but the business was burned out and they got to their creditor. He clearly showed what happens to those who do not repay his debts with a power saw of one poor fellow right before their eyes. The guys were warned that if necessary, they will be found on the edge of the earth. And then they decided that we had to leave this land. Moreover, right now, a new interstellar expedition was formed. True, there were a lot of people who wanted to fly to the ice planet, and they had only one chance left because the ship was the last. The failed politician Kenneth Marshall organized the colonization expedition, for which he opened a center for the set of volunteers. Having lost the elections on Earth, he decides to build a new empire on the other side of the stars, and his supporters generously retain his idea. Fanatics from ordinary voters are ready to follow him anywhere, even on an ice planet, and are ready for Mickey Barnes is also ready for anything, if only to fly away for the ground, and agrees to the position of a consumable, which very surprises the River. He deceives her, saying that, of course, he read everything, but in fact he absolutely did not understand what he was subscribing to. But Mickey has no diploma, neither qualifications, nor any other useful skills, unlike Tim, who managed to get a pilot. But in his ears the guy constantly sounds the sound of an electric saw, which excludes all doubts. He is met by a specialist in JAMA, who immediately announces that his work will be very dangerous and leads the guy to the laboratory, where a huge printer is installed for printing people. At this stage, Mickey could already understand how terrible his work awaits him. But he was fascinated by the smell of JAMA's hair, and he almost did not listen. And she explains that a huge tank below is called a cycle. All organic waste falls into it, ranging from rotten eggs to human remains. All this is cleaned and processed to later turn into another body printed on the printer. 20 hours after his death, the new Mickey will be born from this pipe. JAMA asks him to change clothes and puts him in the apparatus to scan his body, which will be recreated as necessary again and again. After that, JAMA downloads his memory, calling it a reservation of personality. Mickey will have to do this procedure once a week so that when restoring it does not have large failures in memory. Previously, to store the individual, A hard drive the size of an industrial refrigerator was needed, and now there are enough storage facilities, which is similar in size to a brick. However, this procedure pulls out the memories that he have long forgotten from the memory. When he was small, as he and his mother went home from a supermarket, Mickey noticed a red button on the car panel and pressed it. Mom lost control and died. It is strange, of course. The button is in the car, but come on. And now Mickey, recalling this, grows hotly in a laboratory, which Jamma sees. But instead of sympathy, a woman reminds him of the last demand for the consumable, is to put a gun to her head and press the trigger. After all, now his work is to die, and he must get used to it. From this day, Mickey 1 begins his way to the planet Niflheim. The flight takes place as usual, and from the entertainment of people only a visit to the dining room. But there, each piece of food is taken into account, and each calorie is calculated. It was there that Mickey for the first time thinks about what he did agreeing to this flight. A lot of people ate in complete silence when Kenneth Marshall and his wife Ilf appeared. Enthusiastic fans greet them, while Mickey suddenly notices a woman named Nash. She also pays attention to him and invites him to her table. Young people immediately penetrate sympathy. And at this time, the politician talks about the upcoming expedition and that calories need to be preserved. Why is it trying to call people to abstinence and promises that they will arrange a real baby boom when they fly to Niflheim to fill the entire planet? However, Mickey and Nasha are not waiting for arrival. They love and live here and now. For 4 years, a woman has been helping Mickey, supporting him during numerous deaths, for which he is very grateful. Nasha herself is a universal agent, performing the functions of a policeman, soldier, and fireman at the same time. Mickey tries to help her, because behind the door he meets mysterious personalities who are only interested in one question: what is it like to die? You probably have to remind the annoying nonsense that their ship is actually for good and friendly neighbors who should help each other in everything. One day, 2 more women are sitting at the Mickey table, and one of them, named Kaya, begins to give him attention. That, of course, Nasha does not like, who here very intelligibly makes it clear that Mickey is her. And the guy himself continues to do his work, dying and recreating in the present. Upon arrival at the new planet, he first descends to the frozen surface, and, on the orders of the chief scientist expedition, Arcady removes the helmet to breathe air and become infected with all possible viruses and bacteria that live on Niflheim, from which it dies once again. There are many viruses, and several times inventing a vaccine from one species, scientists cannot do anything with another, from which Mickey dies again and again. It is printed to experience all new dangers on it. And finally, the day comes when Mickey number 17 remains alive, taking the vaccine from all viruses living on the planet. This turns out to be his gift to humanity, which can now be fearlessly to go out and breathe air of another world without using a protective mask. One day, as part of a group of agents, he goes to the expedition to study the surroundings. And in the ice cave, people find unknown creatures. One of the women, frightened by the terrible form of aliens, opens fire, falls into the ice roof that collapses, having buried the poor fellow under the ice blocks. The destroyed Marshall accuses Mike of what happened, gives new creatures the name Beetles, and orders the consumable to get one of them. The guy has to go to the ice desert, where soon he falls into the cave. Timo does not even try to save a friend, because he will still be printed. He takes his weapon and flies to the base, leaving Mickey to expect a terrible death in the chewing houses. The guy is preparing for death when a terrible creature of a huge size appears in front of him, surrounded by the same terrible kids. Mickey prays only about one thing, so that death comes faster and turns off. However, having come to his senses, it turned out that the terriers were dragging him somewhere. And unexpectedly for the guy, the beetles do not kill him, but dragging him to the exit from the cave and help to get out. Mickey is even offended. He suggests that they do not want to eat him because his meat was recreated many times. And he shouts to them that it is quite possible to eat it, but animals seem to be escorting it, and he in response tries to reproduce the sounds made by them. Soon transport passes by. Mickey clings to the rear platform and gets to the base where he is welcomed with surprise. Tired and frozen, he goes straight into his room and lies in the bed, where he suddenly discovers himself. 2 Mickey jump up and rubbing each other in horror. It turns out that having learned about his death from Tim, the scientists immediately turned on the printer and printed Mickey number 18, turning men into multiple. Mickey in 18 rushes at his predecessor, about to kill him, shouting that he was printed only 2 hours ago, and he did not even have time to live. But Mickey Sonoan does not agree and recalls who the multiples are. It turns out that several years ago, when such a technology only appeared on Earth, One of the printer developers, Alan Manikov, printed his double without the permission of the corporation to get the opportunity to carry out his dirty inclinations and become a serial killer. After all, when one of the Manics committed a crime, the second played with the children and had iron alibi. When everything was revealed, the police arrested both. In the meantime, lawyers decided how to punish this couple now. Another crime occurred. It became clear that there was also the third Manikov. The case received wide publicity and unanimous censure. One of the journalists, illuminating the process, gave the doubles the name multiple. It was then, speaking in the Congress, Marshall said, that multiplicity is the work of Satan's hands, and asked him to allow him to use the seal of people on a new planet, where it is impossible to immediately deliver the right number of colonists. It was he who invented the term consumables, and called for destroying multiplers if such appeared. Remembering all this, Mickey 17 comes to his senses and understands that his double is taking him to the cycle to burn his remains there. Now he understands Nash's words that each of his versions had its own character and was different from the other Mickey. Apparently, the 18th turned out to be the toughest. But when he was preparing to throw him in a cycle, the 17th suddenly offers his copy to share their lives. The 18th can work and live on even numbers, and he himself is odd. And he admits that he is now afraid to die, because he used to be sure that he would resurrect, but now this would not happen. At this time, Tim comes to the room with one of the workers, to whom he secretly sells Forbidden on the ship. The 18th is very angry with Tim, because he won't quit the 17th in the cave. This incident would not have happened, and offers to kill the traitor. But the 17th speaks out against. Nevertheless, the multiple attacks Timo and drops into a cycle. However, he clings to the edge and hangs over the stove, begging to save him. The 18th extends to his forehead the hot pond, intending to push the man into the fire. When Nasha and her boss come, Mickey 17th is forced to pull Tim, having previously scared him. Mickey 18 in his cabin, while the 17th is hiding and following them from afar. He is outraged, hearing Nash dear to the new Mickey, but he could not do anything. But then he is handed an invitation to dinner with Marshall, which he somehow won. Mickey goes to the dining room of the leader, where he is seated at the table and offered to treat himself with just developed synthetic meat, watered by sauce, and the manufacture of which is the focus of ILF. Soon Kai joins the group. Marshall claims that she is ideal for colonizing a new planet, which seriously offends a girl who believes that she can serve not only an incubator for future children, but, pulling herself together, she offers to pray for her colleague who died in a cave. Suddenly, Mickey Segestine begins a violent reaction. His neck blushes from allergies that arose from artificial meat. Arcady resorts, which admits that the meat has not yet been fully studied, and this reaction can be fatal. He offers Mike the same experimental injection, but it does not help a man. Marshall, considering Mickey only as a consumable, which he, in principle, was, preparing to kill him with a shot in the head, but then Kaya intervenes, which is against such a radical solution. And while he and Marshall are arguing, the 17th comes to his senses. Kaya takes the man to his bedroom. A minute attraction arises between them, and they prepare for the kiss. But having heard the question of the openness of his relationship with Nash, Mickey runs into his room, where he finds the 18th and Nash. This is so exciting. But then Kaya enters the door. Seeing the multiples, she leaves, about to report this a serious violation of Marshall. Nasha runs after her, about to convince the woman to be silent. At this time, the Mickey remaining in the cabin watches on TV an idea organized by Marshall, where it shows a stone from the surface of a new planet, on which he intends to cut the names of all the first settlers. Akai offers Nesh to divide men and give her one Mickey. Meanwhile, Mickey Golden, learning about what happened at dinner, cannot restrain his anger and, yelling it is out of moderately soft double, takes a pistol and runs to the marshal. At the same time, the indignant Nash reminds Kay that both Mickey is one person who belongs only to him. It is interrupted by Mickey Seppel, who asks women to help save a copy. And in the hall, the marshal just cuts the stone with a laser, showing its properties in open sealed passages, where the cubs of the horses Seeing him, people scare and panic begins. Mickey 17 rushes to catch the beetle until the 18th raises the gun again. But Nasha and Mickey Sejesty grab him, and Kaya disarms the man. The furious marshal orders to shoot, and the body of the second Terry that appeared from the stone is torn by bullets. The first at this time publishes a loud squeak, which is captured by his relatives. Realizing that he was in front of him at once, Marshall orders to arrest multiple Nash prisoners in prison cells, and both Mickey discuss their fate, but understand that there is no need to wait for mercy. Suddenly, Mickey 17 recalls that the terriers were not going to kill him, but on the contrary saved him, which makes Nesha suggest their rationality. But then Timo and his assistant come to prison. It turns out that the man received a letter with threats from their common creditor, and now he must saw Mickey into many pieces and send a report on the execution to Earth. Otherwise, there will be a killer. Former partner orders the accomplice to kill Mickey 17. Suddenly, the 18th proposes to take it. He will be much bolder and will resist, which will give pleasure to the lender, which will be pleased with the victory over such a victim. Tim agrees, but when his assistant approaches the camera, Mickey Green grabs him, pulls out a stun gun, and cuts off Tim, after which he takes away the keys and frees herself to Inish. She tells him everything that Mickey said about the Terribles, and he, looking at the girl, recalls the case when she helped him calmly move into another world and met the new Mickey, loving all his options. ZHK leads prisoners to Marshall when they see a huge number of Terribles surrounded by the station, and finds out that they came here immediately after the murder of the cub. Who caught up with them, is trying to talk with Mickey 17 in the tongue of Horus's, and he answers her, although he does not understand what he says. Prisoners are brought to the command post, where Ilf cuts off the tail of the baby's cub in order to create another sauce. But here is the Marshal and cauterizes the cheek of Mickey and 18 with a red-hot rod to distinguish multiples from each other. He announces that he will first destroy their memory and then drop it into a cycle. Nasha is trying to convince the commander that the Mickey and 18 saved him from the jet and talks about the possible rationality of the inhabitants of the planet. And if this is confirmed, what the Marshal does will be considered a crime. Immediately, Dorothy shows the translator created by scientists, who will help to find a common language with aliens. However, Marshall suspenses the horror above the cycle, and the second end of the rope holds out to Nasha, offering to hold it with his teeth. Realizing that the cub can burn out, the woman clings to the end of the rope. Zig, seeing what is happening disgrace, orders his agent to shoot everything on camera. At this time, Arkady brings a new poisoning gas, which the Marshal intends to destroy all the horses. But Ilf proposes to arrange a competition. The Marshal orders to mine both Mickey, taking the launch buttons to his bracelet while Ilf voices the task. Go out and collect 100 tails of Horus's for her sauces. The one who does this will survive the first. Mickey release out. Suddenly, the guys catch up with Dorothy and gives an unfinished but working translator. With its help, Mickey 17 establishes contact with the largest horror that turns out to be the main. He warns of danger. What mom threatens to destroy all people with a sound attack that can blow up human brains if they are not returned to a stolen baby. While the Beatles demonstrate a small part of their strength, Mickey Segist gives Nasha a signal, asking to take out the surviving baby out into the street. At that moment, Marshall is persuaded to leave the combat vehicle and personally command the destruction of monsters in order to shoot this for a historical chronicle. And Mom's horror just asks Mickey to give the life of one person for the death of her baby. Cars drive out of the ship when Nasha grabs and strangles Olaf's legs, demanding to let her out with a horror from the ship. Shows fulfilling her requirements, despite the rage of Ilfa, and recalls the illegal actions of her husband, which he had just committed. Meanwhile, outside the Beatles, realizing that his mother is in danger, they surround her, forming huge heaps from their bodies to hide her from the Marshal and his soldier. He opens a fire, and then Mickey 18 catch up with his car and jumps onto it. The 17th returns the cub to his mother when a double is naked. The 18th, fulfilling the conditions of life for life, explodes a bomb into his vest, killing himself and the Marshal. 6 months later, Nash becomes the leader of the colony and calls for abandoning the consumables program. Nevertheless, a killer finds Tim, but he defeats him in battle. Dorothy is being finalized by the translator. People learn that although the terriers can be killed with ultrasound, they are still not able to blow their brains. Mickey 17 for some time sees in a dream nightmares with Ilfa and a printed Marshal, but equal to Mickey to 18 drives them away. Moreover, the printer is destroyed that Mickey Seppel is trusted to do themselves. The film can be safely recommended to all lovers of non-standard and topical science fiction. Although it seems that he sometimes copies some cosmic masterpieces, he offers his own unique view of things. Han Junho took again and took off something wild, bold, and absolutely not fit into the usual framework.